place as a priest in the midst of nobles, and will often take a seat above kings. A society becomes in time more civilized and stable. As society becomes in time more civilized and stable, the different relations among men become more complicated and numerous. The need for civil law makes itself keenly felt. Then jurists are born. They leave the dark precincts of the courts and dusty recesses of the registries and go to sit at the court of the prince beside the feudal barons covered with ermine and mail. The king's room.
Oh, that's good. Unless you want. I think that, so he's showing there the shift from basically feudalism to democracy that he's seen take place over the last 700 years.
He's more specific. I can't remember where it is, but the tendency differentiates between democracy and equality. Because this is all happening in a non-democratic state, but he's talking about the tendency of, as time is progressing, everything's being equaled out. He says with the advent of exchange rates, money, and printing, and all these things, all of a sudden education is equalized out, and power is equalized out with money, as opposed to just force and holding land and money. Every aspect of life, spiritual, emotional, economic, land, whatever, is being dissipated into a wider range of holdings.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
You said little by little enlightenment spreads. One sees the taste for literature and the arts awaken. He's talking there, it's spreading to more people than just the few that are, sort of the, I guess the few lord, whatever, right? Okay. So how about this? As soon as citizens began to own land other than by feudal tenure, and transferable wealth was recognized and could in its turn create influence and give power, discoveries in the arts could not be made, nor improvements in commerce and industry be introduced, without creating almost as many new elements of equality among men. Let's finish the chapter. From that moment on, all processes discovered, all needs that arise, all desires that demand satisfaction, bring progress towards universal levering. The taste for luxury, the love of war, the empire of fashion, the most superficial passions of the human heart, as well as the most profound, seem to work in concert to impoverish the rich and enrich the poor. You want to talk about that, Jeff?
I mean, it continued here.
So, go ahead.
From the time the exercise of the intellect became the source of strength and of wealth, it's impossible not to consider every addition to science, every fresh truth, every new idea as a germ of power placed within the reach of people, poetry, eloquence, and memory, the grace of wit, the glow of imagination, the depth of thought, and the gifts which is bestowed by Providence equal hand. Turn to the advantage of the democracy, and even when they were in the possession of its adversaries, it still served its cause by throwing into relief the natural greatness of man. Its conquest spread, therefore, with those of civilization and knowledge and literature, became the arsenal where the poorest and the weakest could always find weapons in their hand. So, just the spreading of equality, gain. Well, that equality could be more and more gained just through education, from literature, from like little by little. It's gained, to where the weak gain power through means other than land. But it seems that it started with land.
Right.
That was the first step.
Okay. Here, you caught the word you used there. So universal leveling, that's sort of the idea here. And on the next page he says, everywhere, did you read this yet? Everywhere the various incidents in the lives of the people are seen to turn to the profit of democracy. All men have aided it by their efforts. Those who had in view cooperating for its success, and those who did not dream of serving it. Those who fought for it, and even those who declared themselves its enemies. All have been driven pell-mell on the same track, and all have worked in common, some despite themselves, others without knowing it, as blind instruments in the hands of God. The gradual development of equality of conditions is therefore a providential fact. So we can say that this is sort of a historical idea that he has. That there is no stopping these things, and that man really can't do anything at this point to stop this trend that is going throughout the world. So that's an assumption that's made, that this is a, saying here, blind instruments in the hands of God, and that it's a providential fact. And it has the principal characteristics of one. It is universal, it is enduring, each day it escapes human power. All events, like all men, serve its development. So, and I know in this first section he's got a chapter on the historians in democratic society. So we'll need to compare, what he's saying here about this. I mean, he's sort of putting out these theories here that man cannot stop this thing. How do democratic historians, what's their sort of method of judging historical events? Okay. So he asks a question. He says, where then are we going? No one can say, for we already lack terms for comparison. Conditions are more equal among Christians in our day than they have ever been in any time or any country in the world. Thus the greatness of what has already been done prevents us from foreseeing what can still be done. So he's saying, where are we going here? What is this going to lead to? This progressive development of equality. What does the future look like with this as these things, as this occurrence takes place, of this equality running throughout the world? To instruct democracy, if possible, to reanimate its beliefs, to purify its mores, to regulate its movements, to substitute little by little the science of affairs for its inexperience and knowledge of its true instincts for its blind instincts. So, he's saying here, or isn't he saying here, that we can substitute, he says, to substitute little by little the science of affairs for its inexperience and knowledge of its true interests for its blind instincts. So the equality of conditions, he's saying, creates these sort of instincts in man that he's saying, seems to be saying here, little by little we can get a knowledge of this, of what these instincts are and how they're affecting him, and through that sort of knowledge, he's saying knowledge of its true interests. Maybe we can, by knowing these instincts, maybe we can come up with a way to either use them to the advantage of democracy, or not let them run blindly.
What do you say? The image that comes to my mind here is that this new equality that is spreading like wildfire all over the earth it's new, and it's just like something that's just been born. Think of it like a child. It's just coming into its own with its instincts and everything. But now it's a call. His is a call to a little self-knowledge about what this is, so that we can kind of harness it in the right directions, as opposed to just being led by some sort of